on the front lines of things like manufacturing and complex factory environments. We're hopefully going to learn what something and some people are doing to be the most successful operations that are adapting what I'll call 3D visualization into this world we live in of virtual production now, if that makes sense. But please join me again. So this is the first in a series. Please join me again. Look for announcements. You can follow us on our web or LinkedIn homepages. At the end of this discussion, there's a few visuals here. We'll share the guest contact info. Feel free also to offer up questions in the chat box. We'll try to get to those. Again, we're trying to keep this short and usable to the audience. But my man Brett will handle, make sure that I'm aware that there's a Q&A posting. Today, and if you'll punch up the next slide here, Brett. Today, we're going to combine the experience of a couple of guests. We're going to discuss managing operational change in this new economy. Before we begin, I kind of wanted to talk about, I think we bumped ahead a little bit further than I needed to, Brett. I'm sorry. Sorry about that, folks. Before I even get into these little bullet points I just shared, I wanted to find some ideas just as we get out of the gate. Again, this is our first little broadcast for this. When I talk about new virtual economy, what I'm getting at here is simply this. While your physical plant may or may not be changing right now, with pandemics abound, there's retirements, there's workforce reductions, there's a lot of flux in the operational environment, and yet those of us who work in that arena are being tasked to run with fewer people on site, yet produce at equal or greater production rates than in the past. And this means that we're going to have a gap in personnel that potentially could compromise operational reliability and safety. And I share a couple of quotes here just for your knowledge. This is out of a 2015 that Deloitte & Touche did. There's a recent 2021 that I have available. If someone would like it, just reach out. But I found it interesting that back in 2015, manufacturing executives across the United States, and this was a US survey, I believe, were very much in line with the fact that there was already a knowledge gap or lack of people capable through training to actually continue their success. And today we know that things have changed even more dramatically. So why am I even doing this interview process? Well, I come from a 30+ year of operating in that operational environment, just like my two colleagues here I've worked with for a number of years at different times. And my goal here is to try to bring something forward to all of us who work in that environment, is bring usable tools that make life easier for frontline people to get work done. It's pretty much that simple. And I'll kind of emphasize that with a personal observation. I ask myself, why can my kids use their cell phones to navigate anywhere on the planet, probably for at least the last decade, but people like us on the front lines that run and fix and keep things running so companies can make money can't use their cell phones to simply get around their employer's factory or find things they need to find? Why are we stuck with blueprints and simple laser measurement in the simplest form, or rulers? We want to discuss that here, and that's kind of what this forum is the desire to connect the most valuable tool an operational employee has, which is their eyes, to the power of the investments that have already been made into very complex 3D data. Brett, share up a little bit. Next slide, Brett. So some further recommendations here, and then we're going to get into my first discussion with my first guest, Chris Morabito. When we speak of managed operational change, this is the overview general process that most of us who deal with change in factory ops are familiar with. It's a basic 7-step. Go on to the next slide, if you wouldn't mind, Brett. If we look closer at just one piece of that, the educational piece, this gap in knowledge, if we look at that gap, it comes down to not only training, but retraining, or something I like to kind of call continuous commissioning. But in this discussion, we're going to talk today specifically about this area of managed operational change, the educational piece that goes with it. And as I say, visualization, what I'd like the audience to think of in terms of is being able to actually use or act upon 3D data, which in the operational environment, like what you see here, very complex areas, can be challenging. So that's kind of setting the table here for what we want to do. This is our first. The next round we're going to do in this discussion will probably focus on visualization and its impact on saving energy in facilities like this that are measurable. But let's move on to introducing our first guest. And I'm joined here by a fellow I've known for quite a while. You can bump to that next. There you go, Brett. Chris, let me introduce Chris Morabito. Chris and I have known each other, as I mentioned, many years. Chris, you spent, well, 20 plus, probably 30 years plus delivering reality capture, portable 3D measurement solutions, the really high end of these technologies to a lot of different types of, I call them high stress production facilities and manufacturing. I mean, everything from the smallest precision CNC to building bridges in the experience you and I shared in the AEC market. But today, all of this really cool stuff, you now are doing things with for Duke Energy. Could you just share quickly a little bit about what your mission is with Duke?
Yeah, absolutely.
Brett, go to that live shot if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, thanks for having me and engaged. And just a little, I'll try to do this as quick as I can. But
take your time. Our audience is interested.
My background is mechanical engineering that goes back into plant modernization, design, and way back when we were literally just bringing CAD, using CAD at Fluor. So I've long time ME and mechanical engineering, and then the 3D metrology has been my world since the early 2000s.
The heyday.
Our team at Duke, we provide 3D laser scanning, measurement, and metrology services, which are this metrology is the study of measurement and science of measurement. So we do this for clients inside of Duke, and it mainly started with the critical nuclear critical outages, and the last few years it's extended into fossil and renewable energy stations, wind and gas, mixed cycle, combined cycle. So now we're expanding outside, basically to cover projects for external, for customers external to Duke, outside.
Now, just to jump in here quick, Chris, as we move around this pretreatment facility in a 800 plus megawatt power area, this is work obviously that you completed, you're familiar with. Mm-hmm. When you're bringing lots of these technologies together for Duke to deliver digital information and information about the entire facility and so forth. Here we're looking at something you were doing and testing out a different end of that spectrum, which is mm-hmm. the photogrammetry and this visual end that we're using here. Can you speak a little bit about what you were doing here and what that was as part of sort of the overall of the ops efficiency of the capture world, if you will, and Brett's just kind of moving around your facility.
Yeah. So we basically took we were involved in scanning this entire basically the entire facility.
And that was laser scanning and
laser scanning,
drones, all that type of stuff, right? I mean, high-end stuff.
Yep. We did have drones that were capturing overhead, and we're and then we were using 360 photogrammetry to really to help introduce it, into mm-hmm. Duke, into our world, so this essentially is the same area that we laser scanned, and then I did another area up top that up on the 150 feet up on a top steam deck,
quick question on this, Chris, is as the audience kind of peers at this, and hopefully it's stabilizing. I know it can be a little jumpy in a webinar, but as we look at this, Chris, you will so far capture this area, this pretreatment area, with laser and with 360. Obviously, mm-hmm. there's needs for both. Can you just speak a little bit about what you came out of how would this photogrammetry piece end up helping the high-end engineering that obviously that you're engaged with, right? The compliance of the facilities and the commissioning and so forth, which is
there's often going to be areas that are going to be, they're going to be so tightly complex, and mm-hmm. we're going to be replacing something in there that has to bolt up into something.
Sure.
So depending on what the need is in this case, for training purposes or to, communicate an issue. Let's say we're seeing a valve that, we're not getting a pressure reading on. Let's look into that and then be able to communicate, with a note, a quick note in this tool that mm-hmm. says, hey, I need you to go check this area, and it leads them exactly to that area. So first they can, whether they're calling in a vendor to do that, or whether
right.
one of the service team needs to go out, they can pre-look and preview what they need. Do we have
Mhm.
an electrical panel we have to get into? Do we need what kind of PPE do we need?
Sure.
What kind of safety gear are we climbing? How far up are we climbing? Do we need a lift? How can we
So,
get the information to the right people, and then even invite them in to virtually review this area?
right. It's interesting, Chris, our focus here was sort of on that knowledge gap. And I think that many folks in the operational environment are unaware that information as simple as we're seeing on the screen, obviously it took effort of the organization to, gather it, produce it, capture it, test it, et cetera.
Mhm.
But when you think then in terms of a more specific, when you use visualization or you can visualize to actually do things, can it help deliver more value in your organization, do you feel, just as an educational tool, be it long-term, retrain, knowledge retention? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's so fast, and the scanning that we do, it might take
Mm-hmm.
8 to 10, 11 minutes per scan.
Mm-hmm.
This is I was able to do this whole facility in 10 minutes, with the time of one scan.
But both work
And we
together, right?
catch,
So you end up
yeah, we catch
accelerating your
everything.
process, is what you're
Right,
saying. Yeah.
right. And then if I, when we have this site captured, and there is another project coming up that is a higher, let's say we have
Right.
to replace a steam generator or something large, some large pump,
Mm-hmm.
we have the ability to go, okay, this is what we need to plan, whether we're doing, higher level scanning, or
Right.
again, doing a maintenance, or even having a
Yeah.
vendor.
Stop
Having
there, Brett.
everything right now has changed in our world as far as protocols to
Mm-hmm.
come in on site. We have vendor meetings now where we're bringing information like this to let them see it firsthand, and literally do virtual simulations, to say, hey, these are the avenues that are safe to move a piece of equipment
Right.
out
Well,
and replace it, versus taking out accidentally, or having an issue that has to stop
sure.
one of the lines.
Well, it's interesting also as we're going to take a quick segment break here. But what I can speak to, Chris, and the type of facility you're showing there, I have extensive experience in being in that type of facility and pretreatment area. Um, it's self-evident to me as we sit here and talk about it, since all of us on the line here are working virtual, there's a whole lot of education we could do just simply on how to operate that or fix that unit, or even where to find it. And it seemed that, I guess that you're seeing not only an operational efficiency and just improving your ability to get this data, but it sounds like there's opportunity to expand that as really a true operational education piece. Is that kind of your thought? Now, and I know I'm feeding you an answer there, but you
No,
don't
yeah,
have to answer it that way.
I just think the opportunity is there to, especially
Expand.
for customers that are not utilizing something like this, is to go ahead and start, and it can
Yeah.
really allow, safe, let's say,
Mhm.
safe access, you know, um, of outside or support, and just gives everybody in the organization just better visualization of what's going on, to be able to communicate. How do we take care of this next project?
Yeah. What do we do?
You've got virtual controlled access, for whether it's simulation, training, familiarity, job prep, safe, especially while trying to create a safe environment protocol for customers, employees, support,
Sure.
service teams, and all that,
That's
which is
awesome.
essential right now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and introduce our second guest, Dan Reed, here in a moment. Chris, we're going to get back to you as well, because we'll have a final thought from both our guests as well.
Okay.
But we're going to take a little short segment break for a soundbite advertisement. If it's time to step up from the computer, get a cup of coffee, please do so. And we'll be back at you in about 35 seconds. Visual plan. Seeing is believing. Work easier and safer using 3D visualization. If seeing is believing, then 3D visualization means taking action. Use the power of 3D visualization as your visual skeleton key, unlocking the doors to faster decision-making and operational success. Approve it, protect it, fix it, teach it. You will act when you can see it with your own eyes. See how you too can maximize the use of 3D visualization. Check us out at visualplant.net, and please follow us on LinkedIn to track upcoming events. That guy sounds familiar to me. But let's get back to the interviews. So next I'd like to introduce another professional, a gentleman named Dan Reed. Dan and I have worked together as well in some of the high intensity areas of manufacturing. Dan's a professional engineer, worked well over 30 years, is what I kind of like to call an embedded contractor across very large complex types of infrastructure, refinery, downstream refinery industry, finished fuels, other complex chemical infrastructures. And I know, Dan, you have yourself touched everything from hazardous waste material disposals on Superfund sites to fuel additive processing, all of these in an operational fashion across all of North America and wider. Yet in contrast to Chris, I know that you have little experience working in operations, actually being able to use 3D information to help you. Can you talk a little bit about what you do right now in the chemical industry, and just sort of your thoughts on that those challenges that come along with this knowledge gap?
Okay, I'll do so. Thanks.
And Brett, go ahead and launch into this other area.
Okay.
No, yeah, there you go. You go ahead, Dan, and answer the question.
Well, go ahead and I can talk at the same time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I work in, just to give you a little bit on background, I work in a large number of refineries. Typically, I'm working with the oil industry downstream. I have worked upstream. But one of the things that is a burden in today's world is the management of change process has become very cumbersome. It can require as many as 20, 25 signatures in some cases. And I'm typically, stuck implementing one of these almost every day in some fashion. 3 or 4 years ago, we thought we were lucky when we finally digitized everything and it became a digital world. What it lacks is 15 of those 25 signatures may want to go put hands on and see what we're talking about in the field. As simple as a small chemical injection, a small change. Mm-hmm. A lot of those people, I'll pick on a metallurgist, for example, is not typically familiar with the plant and will spend a lot of time and effort physically going to track down the location we're talking about, where the change is going to be made. Usually that involves me hand holding. If there's something like this, I've eliminated a number of hours. If I publish this to the world and say, it's right here, you can go find it if you need it. Typically, this is enough detail for most of those people to be satisfied. We then take that speeds up that whole process, reduces the manpower involved. We can then take that and use that as a training tool. Here's what we're talking about. We can document what it looked like before. We can document what it looked like after. More so than that, it's simply a training document for the operators that are going to be the end users of this equipment. You can use them in the approval process for ergonomic reasons, etc. It has just tremendous power. I think of the example right now. I've got a number of young operators in one plant I oversee some processes for, very young. The difference between the field operator and the guy in the control room is 1 year versus 2 years experience. So neither one is really versed. None of them have gone through major shutdowns in the plants, for example. So there are a lot of valves that don't get used but once in 3 to 5 years. And to get a consensus as to where that valve is and confirm and just be able to have the board operator walk the guy in the field to that position, this provides a tremendous tool to be able to do that.
Dan, when we've talked as I've introduced you to kind of a wide range of this technology over the last 3 or 4 years, as you've sort of become familiar with it, and now we can look at something here that's very practical, these deaerator systems, and the challenges of somebody saying, well, which valve do I pull? You and I have lived that world. What are your thoughts on why the operations environment has not been able to access this type of data very easily? What is there any thought that or just simply doesn't? Do you have any thoughts on what the obstacles are?
Obstacles would include simply, they look at it's been extremely expensive in the past. Speed is obviously an issue, or used to be more of an issue than what you're showing right here, for example. This is very practical. And it's the education level of the end user to be able to use this software. It's got to be extremely simple so that you can say, this is where I need to be, and this is where I need to go, and this is the direction I need to be looking. And then, likewise, that has to happen for two people if you're trying to communicate something that are probably not in the same room.
And
If
by
they
the
were in
way,
the
I
same
should,
room, life would be much simpler.
yeah, that's right. By the way, I want to give a little credit to Chris Morabito. This is also his help and Duke Energy and us allowing to look at some of the outside of this same facility. So thanks a lot, Chris, and give credit to Duke Energy for letting us kind of use this for the discussion. So,
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I'd love to dig in deeper. We don't want to keep this real deep. Brett, could you just flip a kind of to a little bit of summary slide, because we're at about the 20-minute mark. I know that there's more that we can dive into today, but I'd like to just get some final thoughts from you guys. We're talking a little bit about these different viewpoints, which is really awesome to have you both on here. And Dan, you and yourself are very familiar, almost as a used term in the refining industry of MOC, if you will. And when we look at the overall of operational change, and you consider what we're talking about here, visualizing and being able to use this type of access, if you will, to information as a trainer, can you just speak to what you think impacts could be on the wider area of MOC? Maybe I'll throw that to you, Dan, first, just because I know that's intimate in your experience as a process.
I think the potential is tremendous. It may be limited by your imagination only to simplify the process, because this serves as a tremendous tool to document, put everyone on the same page, communicate, where those changes lie, what those changes will look like, then take that and use the same information and incorporate it directly into a training tool for the end users that have to go implement and use that change. That reduces the amount of effort on everyone's part, expedites the whole process. Typically, from my experience, when I'm asked, I do a number of specialty chemical applications. Many times they're put in kind of in an emergency process, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
I can procure pumps and equipment and construct faster than the paperwork can travel through with the approval process. It makes it very difficult, even in the digital world where everything's moved electronically, to get that many people on board who want to visualize, who want to, experience a hands-on, whether they're actually in the field or can just see it on their computer screen.
Right.
That is a tremendous tool.
That's awesome insight.
Right now.
It's awesome, especially with the timing of our environment, I would say. Chris, any thoughts from your end, Chris? You obviously work with change in a different way within a power organization. What are your final thoughts on change and impacts? To
build on what Dan's mentioned, I think it gets rid of that kind of that treasure hunt of, okay, I've got this problem, and you're trying to communicate it to somebody else that may not have one bit of knowledge about where it is, or maybe they do, but I think it really cuts that time down. Duke is really big. We're big on pre-job briefing and pre-job planning, so what all do we need to pre-plan, and those that we're bringing along, maybe that haven't done this, you can really give them a good training, a pre-visual of what we're looking at, and and what, start to finish, this is how it's going to look. These are the parts we're going to need to, whether it's a maintenance or a replacement, whatever that might be. The planning part and the like Dan said, having everybody on the same page from the get-go, and I think people we're all visual.
Can I offer one more example?
Of course, please.
I managed a service organization for a number of years, and whenever there was a bid spec coming out, if, for example, I didn't have process diagrams, it wasn't worth my travel. And many times I had to travel just to visualize. A drawing does not show you what's in the field. And the classic example is two parts of a single unit were roughly a mile apart. Drawing didn't show that. If you're trying to push chemistries back and forth between these parts, that's an awful lot of hose that you didn't plan for. So those types of examples, this solves that problem instantly.
Well, here's the final softball for both you guys, and it's basically a yes, no, but you can certainly comment. Early on, I said, I made a comment that retaining knowledge of current, factory and process ops is really critical right now. But I said, you know, if we don't do something different in how we educate and keep that knowledge, we risk compromising both operational reliability and safety. Do you guys agree or disagree with that sort of promoted idea?
That was a true softball. Absolutely agree.
Agreed.
There you go. That's the whole point. You got to get yeses at the end of a discussion. How about you, Chris? What do you think?
Yeah, agree.
Good with you too.
Yep.
All right. Well, listen, we're coming up to the end of the time. We still have 5 minutes for anyone that like to chime up or raise their hand right now. We can do a little dabbling, but I want to thank both Chris Morabito. Could you go to that next slide, Brett, and just show the contact information? I want to thank Chris and Dan just for joining for a little discussion, and hopefully they can join again, and we can further this discussion. We do, as I mentioned, intend to repeat under the process of MOC moving forward, and just engage in conversation where these types of techs can really help people, like I said early on, drive and make their jobs easier on the site, and maybe do so without being there as often, and hopefully not compromise safety and not compromise operational reliability. It's a very difficult market. So it doesn't look like, do we have any questions, Brett? Does anybody popped up?
We have a question. What PM processes do you feel this would be most valuable, and where would 360 photos not be valuable?
So let me so not valuable is a good part of it for you, Chris, and where would the preventative maintenance processes benefit most? That might be a good hit for you, Dan, if either one of you wants to take on the question.
I think, you know, there are instances where we, you know, a 16th to an eighth of an inch could, you know, if that's not planned out, that can be quite a, you know, an issue. So that's where we would rely on the right technology for, you know, the intended outcome, you know.
So you're saying kind of like in what we were just showing, Chris, you know, you use a lot of high-end technology, and boy, it makes sure that you're engineering correct and you're in spec and you commission that thing to operate. But after that, visualization tends to be enough to assure that you're staying operating, because
That's
you already
correct.
know. So is that kind of what you're getting at?
Well, I think, you know, you just really, we have to look at the type of accuracy, the type of, you know, the cost associated if we, for instance, miss something, you know, if we take out or have to, you know, bring down a panel that's running a critical operation, then, and we bring down a unit because we didn't plan, you know, we didn't use the right tool at the right time, you know, that's to have all these, to have this as the site-wide, the 360 would be absolutely valuable. And then we decide, okay, what is the project that we need to accomplish? You know,
Dan, I know preventative maintenance, Dan, is a big part of yours and my world in the past, maybe, and speak a little bit of that, because the number of preventative maintenance tasks that turn into savings and operational efficiency is enormous, right?
Yeah, well, let's touch on the planning of any kind of maintenance. I mean, typically 3D visualization lets me, without having to go out in the field, to understand, does the truck fit through the hole it's got to drive through? Is there utilities handy that I can use, the compressed air there, that type of thing, from a planning purpose?
Job safety analyses or assessments, right?
Exactly the same. I mean, you know, are there, you know, is there a safety shower there, or do I need to put a portable one in because the nearest safety shower is not in eyesight? Very simple things that this can do without having to invest time to go out in the field. I would wager, you know, I work in a number of refineries, and I would say probably one person in 5 to 10 is doing no more when he's in the field than visually confirming something.
Wow.
So that's a huge manpower investment just to walk out there. Now, I'm still going to stress that at the end of the day, the operator over that unit needs to be there with the maintenance people to confirm they're doing exactly the right thing. But a lot of that planning can be done without being in the field, with significantly less requirements. And if in the planning stage you need to fix XYZ valve, you can provide pictures of the area, you know, as part of the work submittal. You're several steps ahead of the game.
Yeah, you don't want to be walking around one of these places like a lost sheep, as they say. Any other questions out there? I thought those were great answers. Anyone else want to chime in? Brett, is there anything else that's popped up?
We have another couple minutes. We've got one maybe towards Chris or Dan. Does the ability to share your point clouds in the platform provide value? And if so, what type of value would it provide?
Yeah, I think
probably better for Chris on that one, because I would say Dan is really not even engaged that deeply. But you guys take a shot.
Yeah, first off, I would ask, was it provided or was it created by either scanning? How is it created? Was it created by photogrammetry, or was it created by, what type of scanner was it used, or was it created with, so that I know, the accuracy level of that. And then based on that, I think it could really increase that confidence of accuracy. If you're having to measure or take off, in a certain area, that point cloud could be very, very valuable.
Very good, very good. And then lastly, maybe for Dan, and I think you added a little bit to this, but maybe answer a little bit further. During a turn down, what type of savings would you see using visualization play a critical role here in turn down situations?
Oh, you're talking turnaround. You're talking the
You mean turn? Yep. Yeah, let's clarify that. Turnaround or downsizing?
Turnarounds, yes.
Oh, and turnarounds, the planning. I mean, a turnaround, for example, in an oil refinery is planned years in advance. The planning for 2025 has started in a number of cases. The details of that, the documentation of that through any kind of visualization process. It was a number of years when I was doing the service side of the business before I started incorporating photographs. I mean, obviously customers are somewhat sensitive to putting their equipment out in pictures, but at the same time, if you give a photograph to a maintenance crew in the field, they can walk up and visualize. They can walk up and find it easily. They can walk up and have a plan pretty well put together, so that when that operator comes by, it's basically, this is, confirming everything and move on, and people can go to work. That is, I would hate to wager a percentage of the shutdown, but it would be a measurable percentage savings.
Well, Dan, you and I have both experienced those. Generally in a turnaround, obviously because it's been planned so well in advance, there are a lot of different stakeholders. And all of those stakeholders have to be on a common ground of understanding in that complex environment. And to date, in many cases, it's all of those trips back into the units and back to the front of the plant. It's all of that process needing to get people together to look at the same thing, when in fact visualization today, I think, really affects that, Dan. The percentages are quite high in time savings. I would suspect most assessment and planning could be done virtual from a person's home, very much like we were just looking at that live today. That's essentially how it can be done if you were working through the process, either planning for it or as you follow through with it, right? I mean, it's got to be a significant time percentage of just time and travel.
That's exactly right. And I'll use the example of collision. If two contractors are tasked to do work in the same area, the visualization in advance can recognize those types of collisions and the delays associated with it. Yep. I mean, typically, it's been my experience in every shutdown ever, and I've done way too many of them, it's the unplanned events that bite you, that cost you, that destroy your critical path, that mess up the entire shutdown, cause the cost overruns, etc. They're not fun when they're recognized, and recognizing even a few of those in advance. Visualization is by far the best way to do a lot of that. Saves you a ton of money and gets you a little more sleep at night. It's all good.
Yeah, can relate to that. Sleep is a good thing. Brett, is there any other questions? Looks like we're clean. Okay. Gentlemen, I thank you for your time today. I thank everyone who was able to get online and listen in. I hope you join us again. It was fun talking with a couple of colleagues I've known for many years, and I hope you guys will want to come back and talk again in the future. And everybody, please look for the next event invite. It'll come through LinkedIn as well as be on our website homepage. Thank you very much.